Arsenal are going to Wembley, but before they can even think about celebrating that, they have to host Sunderland. Welcome to the full Arsenal weekend preview. I'm Joshua Hall. I'm joined by fellow Arsenal reporter for The Sun, Simon Collins. Simon, let's touch briefly first on that Chelsea game and Arsenal getting to Wembley before we move on to Sunderland. Wasn't the most exciting game of football?
No, it wasn't one for the neutrals. I don't even know if it was one for the tacticos. We were kind of saying that at half time in the press area. Like, I think some people were saying, "Oh, this is a really intriguing tactical battle," and I was like, "It's just a bad game of football." I think. I mean, Chelsea's plan was quite obvious, wasn't it? Basically, stay in the game until 60, 70 minutes, bring on Palmer, bring on Esteval, and then see if you can win the game. And I think Arsenal probably just kind of accepted, well, if you want to do that, that's fine, because we don't need to score. And defensively, I thought they were really good. That's been a noticeable difference since the Man United game, hasn't it? How much they've kind of gone back to being that defensively solid side. And then a great moment for Havertz at the end. And yeah, probably a great moment for the fans as well in the Emirates, because we've spoken a lot about the atmosphere and the nerves. And it felt like a lot of emotion just came out of the fans when they knew they were going to Wembley after Havertz had scored that.
Yeah, big relief for them. I think that my interesting takeaway from that game was that sort of conversation about, should Liam Rossini have made Chelsea go at Arsenal or should he have sat back? I think it shows there's sort of an inevitability about Arsenal now, where it's like he's gone in and he's like, well, I can either try and sit back and stay in this game and Arsenal will still be able to beat us because they've got a goal advantage, or if I go at them, then that plays into their hands and they'll play around us and they'll beat us anyway. So I think Arsenal have just got this almost like inevitability now, and teams don't know how to deal with them, and I think that was a perfect example of it. And it's meant that they've got their opportunity to go and get that first trophy of the season and kick on from there. Like I say, I think the fans will definitely be over the moon with how that ended, with it being Kai Havertz, like you said, is always going to be something that the fans enjoy whenever he's playing. Chelsea seems to really show up now. But like I said at the top of the episode, there's not much time for Arsenal to breathe. Immediately, they've got to start thinking about the Premier League and that title push. They welcome Sunderland to the Emirates Stadium, 3:00 on Saturday. Sunderland maybe not quite the form that they had been in earlier on in the season, but still picking up points against good teams. What sort of game are you expecting?
Yeah, I mean, they're a good side, aren't they, Sunderland? I think they've been a lot better than people thought they would be this season. Obviously, they spent heavily in the summer and reinvested in the squad. We saw in the game earlier this season at the Stadium Light how tough they can be to break down. I think it will be a very different game from that. That was 5:30 under the lights, rocking, and this is at the Emirates. Arsenal, I think, will have a lot of the ball, dominate possession, and it'll be about trying to break Sunderland down, which they are difficult to do. I mean, no Granit Xhaka, I think, is probably a shame for some Arsenal fans, because I think they would have liked to have given him a good reception. I know from the away fans who went to Sunderland, he certainly got that. But for Arsenal, it's probably a good thing, because I think his leadership in that Sunderland team is absolutely massive. I think the way he organises them and breaks up the play is big. So that will help Arsenal. But this will be probably similar to a lot of games we've seen at the Emirates this season, where Arsenal have got to break down a team that are quite happy to come and sit in and make it difficult.
Yeah, and that's just been the way that teams have had to play against Arsenal this season, and they have become used to it, haven't they? But I guess the question is whether they've got the attacking threat to go and break that down, especially without Bukayo Saka. It looks like Saka is going to be unavailable for this Euro piece, saying that they're targeting North London derby to get him back after he obviously picked up that injury in the warm-up ahead of the Leeds game. I wonder whether Noni Madueke is going to start thriving in this position of being able to play regular football. He certainly looked good against Chelsea. He looked great against Leeds. And I think any player that sort of gets more regular minutes in there in the tank and gets to play more can sort of get better out of that player when they do that sort of thing. And Madueke seems like the kind of player that might be able to do that. Do you feel like he might be a crucial part of trying to break down Sunderland?
Yeah, I think this would be a big run of games for Noni. And he was signed by Arsenal because he is that player who is very different to the other wingers they've got. He's happy to take people on. He's happy to try things. He's very good on one-on-one situations. He's got a specialist coach that he works with specifically to try and work on that part of his game. And when teams sit deep and make it difficult, you need a player who can have that moment of brilliance to try and get past someone and deliver. And Madueke, the thing with him is always the consistency, isn't it? Like when he's on his day, like he was at Leeds, he's great. The problem is sometimes he has that where he's not quite at the level But I think he might have a good bit of confidence now because he knows he's going to get that kind of run. It's frustrating because when he first came in, looked really good, I thought, and then he obviously had that injury and it set him back. So I think he'll have a big part to play. The interesting thing I think as well will be is I think Kai Havertz is going to have to come into the team for me personally. It's just where you play him. Obviously, we've seen him in midfield. We've seen him play out front. I mean, where would you have him in this side? Obviously, we're still waiting to find out about Odegaard. But have you preferred him sort of leading the line, or have you quite liked him in this role since he's come back, where he's almost playing as a number 10 a bit?
Yeah, I do quite like him as a 10. I think a creative player is actually what he has always been. It's what he was at Leverkusen. It's what Chelsea signed him to be. It's actually what Arsenal initially signed him to do before ending up having to shoehorn him into that centre-forward position. But I do also think that over the past sort of 3 years, he has been consistently Arsenal's best striker. So when he does start up there, he gets the best numbers. I think I would probably start him in midfield. I think, like you say, there's question marks over Odegaard. I wouldn't feel like you need to risk him if he is carrying any sort of knock, or even a knock to his confidence, maybe because he's not been the same player recently as he has been. I think I would be playing him deeper down. Also, Victor Gyökeres has got 6 goal contributions in his last 6 games, and 7 games now after Chelsea. But he looks like a player that's gaining a bit more confidence. I'd be keen to keep that confidence going for him. And I think what Mikel Arteta can enjoy is those options. So, if he starts Gyökeres up front and has Havertz in midfield, decides it's not working, he can put Havertz up there and bring an Odegaard on if Odegaard's on the bench, or he can bring Odegaard on in midfield, take Havertz off, put Jesus up top. There's different ways he can sort of mix and match with that 11. And I think that's really to Arsenal's advantage. And I think also, Sunderland will be looking at that and thinking, which Kai Havertz are we going to have to face? Which Kai Havertz is going to play in midfield, or is he going to play up top? Is Jesus going to start? Is Gyökeres going to start? You almost can't prepare for Arsenal the same way you can prepare for other teams, where you sort of know they're 1 to 11 straight from the off. And that's an advantage for Arsenal, I think. I think Sunderland as well, I think they'll be looking at this game. The Emirates has become a fortress really for Arsenal. Sunderland have got a really poor away record. They're 17th in the away table this season, so right down at the bottom. At home, they're third, just 3 points behind Arsenal in terms of home form. But that away form would suggest Arsenal have got a good chance of getting the better of them.
Yeah, and it's a big weekend this. I feel like we say it a lot where it's a massive game in the title race, but because of City having Liverpool, it feels extra big for Arsenal because that gap could suddenly increase quite quickly. And we're going to hear from Arteta obviously tomorrow, and I do wonder with him the kind of tone he'll want to strike. And I think there is a case for Arsenal when you've had a great night like Tuesday, which was a huge moment. You go into Wembley, the emotion for the fans, for the players, everyone is so excited. To then have Sunderland at home at 3:00, you kind of need that reset to make sure that you don't get complacent. So I think that's going to be huge for Arsenal to try and make sure they don't fall off from what was a great night Tuesday and follow it up on Saturday.
Yeah. They're going to have to really sort of take... It sounds like I'm a media-trained Arsenal player, but they really do just have to take each game by game now. Like, that is how they're going to compete for these quadruples and how they're going to just sort of keep ticking along. They've got a mental schedule coming up now after reaching that Carabao Cup final. They've obviously got Brentford is going to be coming up immediately afterwards in the midweek, and then they've got Wolves and they've got Wigan and they've got all these games coming up, then the Northern Derby. So there's a lot for them to balance in this period coming up. Do you think that maybe there's a concern over tiredness? I think a lot of the Arsenal players look pretty tired after Chelsea. Is Arteta going to have to rotate maybe more than we might think?
I think when Arsenal, I always thought when they made that big spend in the summer, I always thought when we're going to see the real value of this squad is when it comes to the crunch time in the season, the busy point. Are they going to get that moment where he can rotate his squad heavily? And this is a perfect example, isn't it? Sunderland, you can bring players in. You go to Brentford, you can make changes. You've got that Wigan game, which I actually think is really nicely positioned because Wigan at home in the FA Cup, that's when you can make mass changes. But Arteta's just got to use his squad. He's got the players there. There's no real excuse for them not to make changes. And when we saw it at Leeds, players can come off the bench and have a huge impact. Look at Martin Odegaard in that game. Look at Jesus. So the message to the squad, I think, is going to be, look, you're all going to play. You're going to have different roles in each game. But you're going to have a chance to stake a claim for why you should start. And if you don't, come on and show me why for the next game, you should be in the team.
Just really quickly before we go, prediction for the game?
I'm going to go for a 2-0 Arsenal, a very professional job. I think the main thing I felt like in this team is that they've really leaning into that defensive side. And I think once a game, it's going to be that sort of situation where Arsenal let nothing come through and 2 goals to get the job done.
I don't want to sound boring, but I was also going to go for 2-0. So well, hopefully it's 2-0 and we've both hit the nail on the head. And we'll be able to have a look back at that when we're back on Monday for another episode of the Full Arsenal, where we'll go over the game against Sunderland and we'll preview the game against Brentford. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.